Ooh, just barely made that with my keyboard skills. So let's go. So I was recently trying to create this part from a Harry Styles song As It Was, and I noticed that I had to layer a couple of synth sounds to get to the sound that actually resembles the track. And I kind of had to look up how to best do that in Cubase. So I figured let's make a video about this so you know as well. And if I forget, I can check my own video for this. Let's have a look. So this is the original part when I originally played it with a single sound. So pretty bland, it's a basic sound, no effects, but it's in there somewhere, but it's not the whole picture. Now if you look at what kind of sound this is actually from the Contact library Vintage Organs, and it's a Farfisa organ with some emulations of the already present layers turned on and turned off. Now what's actually missing is the more plucky transient which is at the beginning of the sound, so I decided to recreate that on another synth. So let's add another virtual instrument track. And in this case, let's choose the free synth Vital. And I actually made a preset for this so that I could easily restore it as it was layer. And you can see that I used the same basic shape for both oscillators. One of the oscillators is an octave higher, and the envelope is pretty fast attack and then a pretty quick delay and release. And furthermore, what you're also seeing is that envelope 2 is also very plucky and controlling the filter over here. Not really any effects on there, so pretty basic. Now in order to see what this sounds like, let's move the MIDI part, which I quantized by the way. My keyboard playing is not that great, but the MIDI part's now on the Vital track, and so you can hear that this sound has much more transients at the beginning and it's not so sustained. And this actually combines really nice with the original Contact pad sound. Small interruption, if you like these kinds of videos, please give it a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm so that it spreads to more people. Subscribe to the channel, and if you want to know when I post another video, you can push the bell icon so you get notified. I also have lots of affiliate links in the description to these stores. So if you want to support the channel even more and you're thinking about buying anything in these stores, you can use one of the affiliate links, make your purchase, and I will get a small commission without any extra cost to you. Highly appreciate it. But let's get back to the layering video. However, the challenge was, how do I get both virtual instruments to play the same MIDI? Now I could of course copy this part on both tracks. So if I pick it up and I hold Alt and Control to make sure that I don't move the notes, I just get a bland copy of the MIDI. But if I then wanted to edit the MIDI, for example, change some of these velocities or add some other expression data, I would need to do that on both MIDI tracks and keep that in sync, which is not ideal of course. So what I did, I added a separate track for the MIDI. Let's call it Synth Lead MIDI. Let's put it on top actually. And I'm going to move this MIDI to the Synth Lead MIDI and just get rid of it on both virtual instrument tracks. Let's make this a bit smaller. And because I want to make clear in my project that this is really one part, I want to add it to a folder track and call it Synth Lead. And because I want to have the ability to treat the output of the virtual instruments in a similar way, for example, vary the volume up and down, I'm also combining them in a group track, also called Synth Lead. Now you may wonder, but hang on, the MIDI hasn't been routed to the virtual instruments yet, because it needs to be routed to both virtual instruments. How do you do that? Well, a nice way to do that is use the MIDI sense of the MIDI track, because over here you can specify that you want to send the MIDI to several outputs, and one of them is that I want to send the MIDI to Contact Transistor Compact Input, my first virtual instrument track, and I also want to send the same MIDI to the Vital MIDI input. So let's have a listen to how this sounds. Yeah, that's pretty good, although I want the mix to be slightly different, so I can control the volume here of the different virtual instruments in my mixer. That's better. And even though I don't need this now, I could also add some MIDI effects here. For example, if I wanted to have a MIDI echo on just the transient part, I could put the MIDI echo effect on there. And the default would sound something like this. Now that's obviously way too wild. But I could also just do an 8-note echo, straight delay. But let's just do 2 repeats. And then listen to it. And that already sounds much better. And there is actually a delay in the original track as well. But I'm gonna achieve it later in another way, so I'm gonna turn this off. But just so you know, you can do all kinds of MIDI effects on those separate synths, so that the two virtual instruments are actually playing slightly different parts. But let's turn the MIDI echo off again now. Because really I'm more of an audio guy than a MIDI guy. So what I want to actually do is I want to put some send effects on the group channel. One of them is a reverb. So I'm going to choose reverence for that. And I'm going to select a medium concert hall there. And I can send to my reverb from here now. And let's see how much we need. Yeah, that sounds nice. But I also want a delay on there. Let's just choose a regular Cubase mono delay. And it's an 8th note delay. So I'm going to call it 8 delay. Select one 8th note over here. And to get a more vintage character, I'm going to cut some highs and some lows. And put the mix on 100% wet, because we're using it as a send effect. Send the synth lead, which is both virtual instruments, to the 8th note delay. Let's see how much we need. Yeah, that sounds pretty convincing. Let's listen again to the whole thing. Yeah, so that's the way you can layer different VSTi sounds, driving them with the same MIDI and processing them as one track by using the group channel. You saw me put send effects on there, but you can also use insert effects, and you can also, of course, vary the panning and the volume of that group channel to alter the synth lead in your project. I'll provide this simple project for you with a link in the description, so you can finish this production if you want to, and add a Harry Styles vocal, for example. And if you want to know a bit more about the Vital synth that you saw me use in this video, I have a separate video on that synth and Basic Sound Design 101. So have a look, enjoy, and see you soon.